Hello and welcome back. Sean here, Mountains Garage. Friday afternoon. It can't decide whether it wants to rain or snow. It's above freezing, but it keeps switching back and forth. Wednesday afternoon, under similar weather conditions, not that it has anything to do with what goes on in the shop, I started assembling my Sonnax Smart Tech drum module. My first rodeo, if you will. It's been pretty straightforward. Ran into a few snags, but let's just take it from the top. Well, first I had an issue. That's why it's Friday and I wasn't able to finish Wednesday afternoon, because total time to assemble. I mean, if you've never done it before and you read and reread the instructions, answer any questions that come up, you might spend an hour or so putting it together. My problem Wednesday was two things. One, I got looking at all the parts all laid out, and I had two forward hubs, and I had 0 direct clutch hubs. This is aluminum, by the way. It's hard to believe that this stout little shaft, which is solid steel, is an equal match for the aluminum splined hub, but we're talking, 3,500 horsepower capable right there. It always amazes me how engineers know that, when to hold them and when to fold them. They know where to put the beef and where you can get away without it. So anyway, I needed a direct hub. Clearly that was a mistake. And the Sprag Shaft, that's what this piece is called. This will go down over the center support seals. The Sprag attaches here, and you can see it here coming up through the direct housing and clutch assembly. I have it assembled to this point, and it will spline into the direct clutch hub, and the clutches will go down over it just like that. But everything else laid out beautiful, billet, the input shaft beautiful, all the steel pieces are beautiful, with the exception of the Sprag shaft. It is, I hesitate to call it rusty. I don't know how good the camera's going to pick it up, but it is stained, and this is after I spent some time with some Scotch-Brite, because where it rides over the seals of the center support, there's still stain marks. It's dirty and nasty in there, but this area doesn't really affect anything. Where the quad rings go, there's 2 quad rings and anti-rotation things that go here. That's just all dirty and nasty, but I could clean it out. Same with the bushing rides. It just wasn't up to par for especially a very expensive kit. So first order of business, call Sonnax. I'm in Maine, they're in Vermont. So we're in the same time zone. And it was probably 4 o'clock Wednesday afternoon. And you choose tech support. That's what I chose anyway. Got a guy named Tom. He could not have been more helpful. You're talking to a live voice in about 3 rings of the phone, and they know their product. And first off, he wanted the lot number off the box, because they want to make sure this mistake didn't happen more than once, 2 forward hubs. So I took care of that business first. I said, I don't have the direct clutch hub. He wanted to make sure I had everything else, and I was relatively sure after reading the instructions a few times that I did. And asked me if I'd send some pictures of the lot number on the box, and I happened to mention this staining on the Sprag shaft. He says, yes, please send me pictures of that. We don't want ugly parts going out. Got a call back probably 25 minutes later, and he gave me his email address. I sent him the information and the pictures, and they were sending me out a new stub shaft. He'd already talked to the machine shop manager, and that should not go out dirty like that. It has to be the cutting fluid probably, which is water soluble. Maybe the water content was too strong and it didn't get cleaned properly before it went in the box. And long story short, they sent me a new one, and my missing direct clutch hub. And again, that was Wednesday afternoon, pushing 5 o'clock, and it was here at lunchtime today on Friday. You can't complain about that. You get a live voice. That's the beauty of dealing with a company that cares, that's here in America, and actually wants to solve the problem and make sure other people aren't going to have the same problem. That's why he wanted the lot number. They're going to probably go rip through some boxes to make sure that, you know, things didn't get mispackaged for some reason. So at first glance, I took 2 of these out of the boxes. I'm like, that seems odd, but let me review the instructions to make sure it's not something I don't understand. Again, this is all new. So, assembly. So far, it's been very straightforward. We'll start with the forward housing and piston and input shaft. You have to press your input shaft of choice into the forward housing. There are 3 input shafts you can choose from. 2 of them are 1-inch diameter. One that we didn't choose has another machine surface here for the front stator bushing if you want to run one. Option 2 in 1-inch thickness is no machined area for a stator bushing. More flow out of the converter is a good thing. You need a bush turbine converter, but this is definitely higher performance than having your front stator bushing, but I guess it's nice to give you the option if you're building a stock transmission, whatever reason you wanted your Sonnax drum module but want to retain the front stator bushing, you have the option. And in the 1.1/8 shaft, which would require a larger stator tube in the pump, that's 3,000 horsepower plus size. The only option is only machined area for the rear stator bushing, no front stator bushing. So 1.1/8. And those are your 3 shaft choices. They tell you to press it into the housing and measure the depth here, because apparently there's other companies' input shafts will fit if you got the right spline. I have a Sonnax shaft and a Sonnax kit, so it was no problem whatsoever. The splines, when you look at them, you actually have to, with the housing on the bench, kind of start the shaft, and when it starts, it doesn't even look like it'll fit together the way the splines are made, but when it starts, it actually locks right in. You can pick it up before you even go to the press and push it right in, no problem. When you go to put the piston into the housing, this is a apply piston right here on the inside. There's a straight O-ring in the middle, just a normal O-ring, so put some lube on that and the piston would fall right on, so there's nothing to worry about assembling in there. And on the outer groove is your traditional lip seal, but it's right there. You can actually, I walked it around with my thumbnail. Of course, I lubed the heck out of it and just pushed it right in, pushed the piston in to the housing. Piece of cake. It's right there. There's nothing, there's no drum blocking you. Couldn't be any better. The springs are different in the forward and the direct. They're different color and they're different sizes. The pistons are different, and again, the holes for the springs are different. The ID with the O-ring is different, so there's no way to mix them up. And even the forward springs are very stout. You want to push 360 on this retainer. This is a Turbo 400 retainer and snap ring, I'm sure of it. And traditional snap ring like you'd put in a forward drum. And that unit is ready to go. The direct is a little different. I'm going to take it off the Sprag shaft. Right now I'm sizing my seals, if you will, but that comes right off. This is your direct housing. And it has a check ball, but they also drilled a small bleed hole, smaller than most trans brake valve bodies would call for, and their instructions tell you to drill it to the size recommended by the valve body manufacturer. So I did. It's nice that it's pre-drilled. You just whip you kind of at a 45-degree angle from the inside, whip right through it. This has the lip seal for this one is the same as the forward, I'm sure, on the outside, but the inside, the O-ring actually goes into the piston this time instead of into the housing, but a little lube on it. It's a straight O-ring in the middle again, so nothing to do there, and you just, again, push it around on the outside. And this time with the direct, they have these anti-rotational things that have to line up with these little nugs on the side, so it'll actually slip in to the cage, if you will. And that was that. Done. Now the Sprag shaft comes like this, and you have this shield. That's a shield right there. So actually you just kind of set this here so you can work on it. You put the shield down, you put your 36 element Sprag inside the race, and work it down on here, and there's 4 retaining bolts that bolt right on here to hold the Sprag on. They even give you an arrow to make sure that's all slippery now, but it rotates the right way, which it does. I got that Vaseline on that, so I can't hold it, but if you don't believe me, I can hold it like this. Ready? It rotates that way. And then in the grooves here, there's 2 quad rings, so you have to make sure they're not twisted. And then there's a groove on either side, and there's a plastic ring that goes, a retention rig that goes over it, what you can see there. And you put them 180 degrees apart like piston rings. And they recommend that you put it into the direct housing right here and let it get squished down, because when this actually assembles into the transmission, you're going to put this in first over your center support and into the intermediate clutches. And if you were to take this whole unit out, you can lift it by, this will be snap ringed into the cage. It's going to all come out. If this sticks, it could easily fall on your foot because it's just hanging in there. And when these get compressed, the quad rings and the plastic retainers, it could fall right out. It should sit right there. So when you assemble the transmission, and yes, you do leave the second seal back off the center support like you would when you're dual feeding a traditional direct drum. And it says in the instructions to do that. I wasn't sure. I was pretty sure you would, but you never know with new stuff until you study all the oil passages, what kind of voodoo they've done. But in this case, yes, you do leave the second seal down from the top off. And when you go to assemble it, you can put this right down over into your clutches, which is nice. And then this rig just pops over that, and you just got to line up the spline and push those in there. I'm not sure when this is in the transmission if I'll actually know when I am lined up, because they're pretty, I mean, it's already getting sized. It just went together pretty easy right then compared to the first time I did it. So I think when I actually go to put it in the transmission, it's going to go pretty smooth. And I guess I'll know when I'm all the way down. Time will tell. So it really is that easy. Now you've got your hydraulic portion done. You got your Sprag setup done. Now you got this little cage rig, which is going to contain your forward clutches in the front and your direct clutches in the back. And the beauty of this module is the Turbo 400 counter rotates the direct drum in low gear, which is what, you know, some of its inherent danger. With this rig, the only thing that's going to counter rotate is the Sprag shaft, which all its weight is down low, this aluminum hub, and just your friction, your clutches. Everything else is turning the proper direction, if you will, and the only thing turning backwards are these pieces and your clutches. So a lot less weight compared to a direct drum, for sure. So when it comes to the forward housing, it's actually marked. They have these marks. If you watch the video like I told you should, it's marked forward, so you can't mess that up. And these little marks on it. And for the first thing you need to do to the cage is to put this pressure plate in the middle, a ply plate. What do they actually call it? Let me get my terminology correct. Pressure plate. They call it the pressure plate, but it has a groove that goes all the way around on the forward side, and they got the F marked on the drum right there. They ask you to put, you know, set it with the F at either 6 or 12 o'clock, and put one snap ring opening, because you need to snap ring this into the cage. Put one snap ring opening on one side and one snap ring opening 180 out. And next I'm ready to load my clutches in. There's a thin steel on either side, and then the clutches and steels in the middle. And then you literally just put this in, put the snap ring in. I'll do that in a minute. Flip it over. From the direct side, you'll load the forward hub in, clutches and steels, just like the other side, and then lock this in. It really is that easy. So let's go ahead. I'm going to take my clutches out. Speaking of clutches, again, this is a unlimited horsepower potential unit. I'm sure that like everything else has a limit, but they advertise it over 3,500. They've tested it. If you go to the transmission forums, people are always, saying, what's the trickiest clutch I can run to, save my transmission? Here's a relatively stock set of Borg Warner tans, nothing special, good quality, but there's no tricks. The clutch is not going to save your transmission. It's the proper hydraulics. So, stock steels, no coating, no nothing. Absolutely 077s there, and these are 60s that go on either side. There's 4 of them. In each clutch pack, they start with a thin one. Basic stuff. On the direct side, we will run the little rubber separators. So when it's not applied, it's not going to cause, it frees up. Friction-wise, it definitely frees it up and also keeps the clutches from rubbing on the steels and having unnecessary wear. That trick's been going on forever. There's no need to do the forwards because they're applied all the time for the most part when you're going forward. And yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and stick that together. There's 2 bearings for the hub. Pretty simple stuff at this point. It really is that easy. I can't wait to get one of my own. And we're back. Just like that, we're all together. Well, between a few phone calls and miscellaneous adventures, probably an hour or 2 has gone by. It's getting dark if you're paying attention, if you can see outside. Assembly notes. The cage itself has 4 snap rings, 2 for the pressure plate in the middle, and 1 on each end for the forward and direct clutch housings. And what I can tell you of what I've learned is if it won't fit in the slash cut, the snap ring, if you can't get it in and it's fighting you, take it back out, flip it over, it'll fall right in. I learned that the hard way. I messed around one of the ones on the pressure plate for 15 minutes, like, why won't that fit? Turn it over, it goes right in. It's nice having the slash or hash marks they put on the cage itself. So when you're putting in the separators and stuff, you can remember where you're at. Again, this one with the forwards, you can set your snap rings opposite each other just to try to balance it out. The only last warning they tell you is when you determine the end play, put your washer in the pump half here, make sure the pressure regulator, boss, cast into the back of the pump, clears. I'll do the same. This transmission is getting a case saver. This is physically a little bit smaller than the direct drum, but I always check for interference for the direct drum on the case saver. In this case, it'll just be down here somewhere. I don't know, it looks intimidating when you first take it out of the box because you're unfamiliar with it. There's lots of parts. However, I might have a couple hours into the whole thing, including time on the phone with Sonnax, who could not have been more helpful. I mentioned that. So yeah, now we're ready to finish the transmission. Again, I have, now that I've handled one of these, and I honestly can't wait to have one myself. I just have to come up with the money for it. And probably be a little closer to needing it. My Race 55, not quite ready, but it's Friday night, getting dark, time to go make supper. Hope you have a great weekend. Talk to you in a couple days.